The rideshare shuttle pinballed onto the asteroid gas station that passed for their precinct, its windows fogged and a magnetic siren suction cupped to the glass. The siren trembled down the pane during a code 3 and fell into someone's lap. Nova clutched a printout stack the size of a small moon and said he was calm while vibrating in 3 directions. Zarg sipped cold synth coffee from a cracked mug and stared at the distant horizon like it owed him money. J.I.M-BOT floated alongside, already narrating their failure in a posh tone no one had requested. A memo drone whirred down, bumped Zarg on the head and chirped out the news. Replacement cruiser denied due to a sector-wide budget freeze and ongoing asset recovery review. In case the point missed, it added, "Have you tried walking?" Dispatch flagged a sector safety audit with response time penalties if missed, explicitly noting no holocalls and arrival required in an ISC-certified vessel. Nova opened the portal to borrow a ship and found a 6-week training queue, 16 approvals, and Form 38Q, asking for a 400-page compatibility affidavit. Zarg watched the suction cup sirens slide off the window again and said, "We'll build one." Nova said, "From what?" The discount bay screen lit up with cheery ads for Snap and Fly hubs, habs, and zones. They stared at the DIY Fleet Initiative waiver that promised a steep discount and voided everything else. The tablet asked if they agreed, personal liability highlighted in bold. Zarg tapped the screen. Nova yelped. J.I.M-BOT sighed for everyone as the bay locks clamped down and the doors sealed around them. They stood in a cavernous parts bay that smelled like hot plastic and old desperation. Racks of modules towered over them, everything colour-coded to imply competence. The account meters ticked down their meal stipends in real time. Nova looked at the starter bundle hub plus hab plus zone like it was a bomb wearing a party hat. "This is fine," he said. "This is protocol. This is very not fine." Zarg set his coffee on a crate labelled Maybe Fuel and pried open the first pallet. "Starter bundle," he said. "Like a salad, but heavier." J.I.M-BOT drifted to the nearest kiosk. The screen greeted them with a smiley face and a name tag, Patch 4. It introduced itself in a chipper tone that made Nova trust it less. "Welcome to the discount modular experience," it said. "Recommended accessory integrity, also this adapter." A drawer spat out a tiny block of metal. Nova checked the manual. "The Universal Power Bus expects proprietary connectors," he said, flipping pages with growing horror. "Universal means universal within their brand. We have the wrong hub." Zarg plugged the adapter in anyway. "Universal means it fits if you kick it," he said. He kicked it. It clicked. At the edge of the bay, a Union assembler drone rolled forward, picked up the only torque wand, stamped in for duty, and announced an 18-hour break per contract. It parked itself in the doorway like a sleeping elephant. Nova reached for the wand, then stopped when the drone raised a tiny sign that said, "Do not." They started without it. Gravity hiccuped in the bay, and a cloud of loose bolts drifted up from the open crates and hung in slow motion over Nova's head. He jabbed a finger at the cloud. "That's littering," he said, pulling out his ticket pad out of reflex before remembering he was about to fine themselves. "Save the citations for someone who deserves it," Zarg said, as he snared bolts like a fisherman with a net made of apathy. Patch 4 hummed. "Would you like to upgrade to gold tier compliance stickers?" Nova brightened. "Do we need them?" Patch 4 loaded a pricing page that was half glitter, half threat. "You don't not need them." The procurement portal opened on Nova's tablet. It requested Form 38Q, 16 approvals, a 400-page compatibility affidavit, and a notarized confession of guilt in advance. The portal timed out every time he reached page 2. He stared down 15 different upload buttons and said, without irony, "I memorized the manual. Why is it not helping?" Paperwork's for planets that still exist, Zarg said, shouldering a surveillance hab module into place. It was meant to watch suspects, not keep cops alive, but it had walls and a door which put it ahead of most of their options. A doc-compliance micro-AI flashed to life on a little stand. Its eye tracked every fastener like a hawk with a law degree. Non-OEM fastener detected catastrophic variant on it announced after each screw. The bay lights went amber, then green, then amber again, as the micro-AI paused the build to open a case. They waited out 27 pauses in 20 minutes. J.I.M-BOT tried to help by scanning the wiring harness. "Diagnostic complete," he said. "You're all idiots. I have 14 ways to solve this. You chose none." He drifted away in a sulk that looked practiced. An inspection drone hovered in from the ceiling, buzzing like a hungry lawyer. It recited a checklist that sounded older than half the modules in the bay. Original manufacturer components required for certification. Non-compliant combinations are prohibited, it said. It dinged them for using a postal skiff power bus, a surveillance hab, and confiscated pirate thrusters. Nova tried to explain that the pirate thrusters were evidence. The drone replied, "Evidence is not a brand." They kept going. Patch 4, offended by Zarg's confidence, dumped a compatibility matrix onto Nova's tablet to prove him wrong. The matrix was a spiderweb of red and orange with 3 tiny green boxes in the bottom corner. Nova squinted. "If we route thermal waste through the coffee machine, we can meet heat dissipation in an emergency," he said, voice rising into hope and fear. "Finally," Zarg said, "a plan I can support." They Frankensteined a Corvette out of the postal skiff bus, the surveillance hab, and the pirate thrusters. Nova labelled every cable and pipe with his label maker as if order alone could hold the thing together. J.I.M-BOT hovered with the adapter cable like a surgeon offering a scalpel to a raccoon. Patch 4 tried one last upsell. "Gold tier compliance stickers come with a holographic sheen." "We can't afford sheen," Nova said, slapping on the free grey decals that came with the bundle. He wrote test unit across the hab in marker. When they finally powered the bus for the first time, the bay went into lockdown. Doors clamped, sirens pulsed, the coffee machine's screen lit up with good cheer. Brewing atmosphere. A hiss built as breathable air vented through a chrome carafe line. The hab rotated 180 degrees so that up was sideways. The pirate thrusters booted into a menu labelled plunder mode. The inspection drone announced, "Unsafe conditions detected, filing violations more." A bright spark leaped from a panel and chased itself down a cable. A small fire popped up by the fuel regulator. Nova grabbed an extinguisher and shouted, "This is not in the manual." Zarg watched the fire, nodded once, and said, "If it was important, it wouldn't be on fire." He jammed a crowbar into the power bus and leaned on it until it seated with an ugly pop. J.I.M-BOT swooped back in. "I have 14 ways to solve this. You chose none," he said again, and then, because no one was listening, added 15th option, improvisation. He rerouted the coffee machine loop, cut pressure to the espresso line, and tied it into the oxygen recycler. The hiss dropped to a steady hum. The coffee machine flashed a proud banner, thermal buffer active. Nova hot-swapped relays following Patch 4's matrix, hands steady for once. The hab settled. The thrusters flicked from plunder to idle. The inspection drone rotated in place, confused that it wasn't winning. "That will be a week-long re-inspection," it said after a beat, like a threat wrapped in boredom. Zarg didn't look up. "That sounds like future Zarg's problem." The doc compliance micro-AI found a mismatched screw and tried to pause them again, but Nova slapped the acknowledge button before it could finish the sentence. For a second, everything held. They stood there breathing what used to be coffee. Nova stared at the ductwork he had labelled with phrases like, "don't touch" and "maybe air." "Modular means modular within a brand," he said, not to anyone, just out into the air. "We're fighting the parts, the bay, and the calendar." J.I.M-BOT pinged the dispatch feed out of boredom. "There is an incident within range," he said. "Illegal parking on a comet. How poetic." Nova's eyes went wide. He dove back into the manual, flipping to a page he hadn't thought he'd ever use. ISC Safety Code 12D, subsection 7.2.3b, he read, voice flat with disbelief, then increasingly bright. Provisional field certification during active incident response if minimal functional metrics are met. He looked at Zarg. If we launch responding to a live call within 10 minutes and we pass the bare minimum in flight, they have to switch from gatekeeper to incident observer. The inspection drone tried to object. Nova held up the manual. The drone hovered in silence, processing its own irrelevance. Zarg wiped coffee off his mustache. So we launch a ship that shouldn't fly to go tell someone not to park on a comet. Exactly, Nova said. Patch 4 ejected a roll of compliance decals with a dignified sigh. Fine, take the free ones. I will be emotionally unavailable until you return. They looked at the cobbled-together Corvette. It looked back with the confidence of a chair balanced on a broom. Name? Nova asked. Zarg took the marker, leaned in, and scrawled the donk in crooked block letters across the side. The marker squeaked. There, he said. Classy. J.I.M-BOT checked the clock. 9 minutes, he said. And you have not yet addressed the fact that your ballast math is a crime. Zarg kicked a crate of donuts under the aft bench. Ballast. Nova clapped compliance decals on every open surface. The inspection drone dimmed its light and switched to a new prompt. Incident observer mode ready if dispatch acceptance received. Accept the call, Zarg said. Let's see if paperwork can fly. J.I.M-BOT spliced the autopilot into the guidance bus with the kind of speed that implied he'd done it before, and never told anyone. Nova labelled every wire twice while muttering the regulation under his breath. Zarg strapped into a chair that had once been a mail sorter and tightened the bolts with a wrench that technically belonged to the Union drone currently on break. Dispatch pinged. Nova accepted the comet call. The inspection drone's status light flipped from judge to chaperone. Observer mode active, it said in a voice that sounded disappointed by design. Minimal functional metrics to be assessed. Stable trajectory for 30 seconds, communications clarity, breathable atmosphere, and intact landing procedure. The coffee machine chimed, Descale now. Zarg ignored it. The message doubled in size and started pulsing. J.I.M-BOT muted it with prejudice and rerouted its nag to a dummy light labelled Maybe Later. They launched. The donk shuddered, then committed. Pirate thrusters whined like they preferred pillage to public service, but they pushed the ship clear of the bay. Nova read off the checklist he'd made from his labels. Oxygen stable-ish, thrusters responding, guidance... yes, guidance exists, he said. Communication clear. J.I.M-BOT opened a channel. This is donk actual, he said, dignity dripping from every syllable, responding to illegal parking on Comet T92. The inspector drone hovered behind Nova's shoulder, watching the numbers like a judgmental parrot. Stable trajectory assessment begins now, it said. The ship yawed left. Zarg countered with a gentle tap to the thrusters. A label near his elbow peeled back from the panel. It read, Do not touch. He touched it. The ship lurched like a startled animal. Nova squeaked. The inspector drone cleared its throat, which was an odd feature for a drone to have. Do not touch, Nova said, grabbing Zarg's wrist. Too late, Zarg said, unbothered. He nudged the donut crate with his boot. The ship steadied a hair. See? Ballast? They hit stable for 38 seconds. The inspector drone registered the check and tried to look unhappy about it. Communication remained clear, save for the coffee machine flashing, brewing, atmosphere again every time J.I.M-BOT siphoned heat into it. Your thermal margins are a suggestion, J.I.M-BOT said. I have 14 ways to improve them. You chose none. He flicked a new bypass into place with something that looked suspiciously like flare. 15th option, improvisation. Comet T92 turned beneath them like a misshapen ice cube. The illegal Parker, a tourist shuttle with a paint job that apologized for itself, had jammed its landing struts into a restricted zone marked by a faded cone. Nova pulled up the ordnance and nearly cried with relief. This is straightforward, he said. I can do straightforward. They swung into a landing approach that was 90% nerve and 10% luck. The inspector drone announced, "Landing procedure review commencing." The donk bounced once and stayed down. The inspector drone grudgingly logged an intact landing. Nova floated to the hatch, remembered the coffee machine was their oxygen buffer, and decided to keep his speech short. He opened the external speaker and cleared his throat. "Attention, shuttle in violation," he said. "By authority of the Intergalactic Space Cops, you are improperly parked on a comet. This is both unsafe and rude. Please move." A passenger leaned out the shuttle window and waved a foam finger. "We're buying souvenirs," the passenger shouted. Zarg nudged the crate of donuts in front of the camera and said, "We're also buying souvenirs." Nova wrote a ticket and used his label maker to stick it to the shuttle's hull. "You have 2 minutes," he said, "or we boot your struts." The passenger looked unimpressed until the inspector drone, now an official observer, recorded the exchange with a timestamp. They moved. The shuttle huffed away on a cloud of indignant propellant. Nova issued a final warning and tried not to breathe out of rhythm with the coffee machine. He turned to the inspector drone. "Minimal metrics?" he asked. The drone considered the logs. It had tracked stable trajectory, clear comms, passable oxygen, and a landing that had not killed anyone. "Provisional certification granted," it said, reluctant. "Call sign, donk actual. Condition, experimental C1. Notes, everything about this is unwise." Nova beamed. J.I.M-BOT rolled his eye. Zarg said nothing and adjusted a bolt that didn't need adjusting. They lifted off the comet and headed home, the donk humming in a way that hinted at confidence and noise at the same time. The coffee machine pinged Descale now again with a new intensity. Zarg muted it with a flat finger and said, "Future Zarg." "Future Zarg is you in 11 minutes, Nova said, but he was still smiling. He read the regulation one more time out loud, like it was a bedtime story that finally ended well. Back at the bay, the doors opened for them, like the station was surprised they'd be returning alive. Patch 4 woke up from whatever it claimed was emotional unavailability and flashed a confetti animation that looked legally distinct from confetti. "Congratulations on not dying," it said. "Would you like gold tier compliance stickers?" "We passed without them," Nova said. "We'll take the free kind." Again. He patted the coffee machine's side. It purred in a way that only confirmed it was still trying to brew their air. They held a rushed naming ceremony. Nova took the marker, corrected the G in donk, and made it worse. The glow sign they bolted to the hull hung at an angle that hurt to look at. The donk, in all its crooked pride, was now an ISC Corvette class one of a kind. A memo drone descended the moment they powered down. It pinged with the bright tone of bad news, dressed as good news. "Commendation, innovation and cost savings," it said. "Assignment, lead the precinct's DIY fleet pilot program. Training others begins tomorrow. Budget, none." It paused. "Monthly safety audits for the donk are now mandatory." Zarg nodded, unsurprised. That sounds like future Zarg's problem. Nova accepted the memo with hands that shook less than usual. "According to subsection 7.2, wait, is this illegal?" he asked. And then the coffee machine, their oxygen, their heater, their heart, chimed one more time with a polite insistence. "Descale now." J.I.M-BOT sighed like an entire bureaucracy and said, "I can think of 14 ways to avoid this meeting. You will choose none." They stood there. Not dead, ship humming, paperwork weaponized and ready to be used again, the donut crate still wedged under the bench like a thesis on how they did things now.
Intergalactic Space Cops, the galaxy's pride, fighting for freedom.